Even though schools are closed, education is not. You are still learning and growing every day, and we want to help. The Tennessee Department of Education is thrilled to be able to offer a number of opportunities for learning at home. And we are so grateful for the partnership with PBS to bring you these lessons on television and online. I'm so deeply grateful for the outstanding teachers across the state who have developed these lessons especially for you. Tune in, keep growing, keep learning. You're doing a great job.
Hello, welcome to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all our third graders out there, though all children are welcome to tune in. This lesson is the first in our series. My name is Miss Copeland, and I'm a third grade teacher at Venus Stewart Elementary in Gallatin, Tennessee. I'm so excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to my classroom. I want to give a shout out each day to one of my students in my classroom, whom I'm missing right now. So Hayden, I miss your smile and high five every morning. I also miss your sense of humor and kind heart, and I hope you're doing well. We're going to be reading an adaptation of the book titled The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Today you will need 3 pieces of paper and a pencil. Before we get started, let's check out a few vocabulary words that you will hear as I'm reading. The first word is meandered. What's that word? Meander. Meander is a verb. This word means moving slowly and without purpose. An example of that word in a sentence is the dog meandered around the large grassy field. The next word is mesmerize. What's that word? Mesmerize. Mesmerize means to hold the attention of someone or to be fascinated. An example of that word in a sentence is the small baby was mesmerized by the sound of his toy. And the last word is contemplated. What's that word? Contemplated. Contemplated is also a verb. The definition of the word means to think deeply about something or someone. Here is an example. The teacher contemplated the difficult problem. Now let's jump into the book. We will read the title again, The Wind in the Willows. There are many types of willows, and these particular ones are weeping willow trees. Willows like a lot of water and therefore tend to grow near sources of water such as rivers, lakes, and ponds. The Wind in the Willows was written in 1908, more than 100 years ago, and is considered one of the best children's stories ever written. This story is of a high quality and has remained well known throughout the years. It is known as a classic. Do you know any stories that are considered classics? Have you ever read or heard of Charlotte's Web, Alice in Wonderland, The Chronicles of Narnia, Where the Wild Things Are, or A Wrinkle in Time? These books are just a few examples of many classic books. Ask your parents, grandparents, caretakers, or guardians if they are familiar with the classic story of The Wind in the Willows. The Wind in the Willows was written by a man named Kenneth Grahame. Kenneth Grahame was born in Scotland but moved to England when he was very young and lived there the rest of his life. He told these stories to his son, whom he called Mouse, to entertain him before he ever wrote them down. This story is set in the English countryside where the author grew up, near a river called the Thames. The Thames River runs through the country of England. After this lesson, see if you can find Scotland and England on a world map or globe, or search online. Because Grahame lived in the UK, the United Kingdom, The Wind in the Willows is written in British English. In the United States, most people speak American English. British English and American English are very similar, but there are some slight differences in words or phrases. Listen for some of these as we read each day. In the read aloud today, you will hear about a character who is messing about in a boat. What do you think that means? We might say messing around instead of messing about. In both cases, it means that the character is not doing anything on the boat with a particular purpose. This map shows many of the places described in The Wind in the Willows. The story begins here at Mole's house. We will examine the map more closely as we read. Over the course of this book, we are going to meet many of the characters in this book and think about how their actions impact the story. Today, you will meet Mole and Rat. We will think about the characters' thoughts, words, and actions to help us describe both characters using a character trait. A character trait is a word or adjective that describes a character in a story. Some examples are kind, lazy, brilliant, helpful, and mean. To determine a character's traits, first find evidence in the text that shows a character's thoughts, words, or actions. And then think, how would I describe the character based on what they're thinking, saying, and doing? Go ahead and grab your 3 sheets of paper. On one sheet, label it Mole. On the second sheet, label it Rat. And on the third sheet, label it Thoughts. As we read today, think about what Mole and Rat are saying, thinking, and doing, and how you would describe them as a result. Part 1 is called The Riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash. He did this until he had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur. Spring was moving in the air above and the earth below and around him in his dark and lowly little house. Any wonder he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor and said, "Bother!" and "Oh, blow!" and also, "Hang spring cleaning!" and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. Mole immediately made for the steep little tunnel, and without a moment's hesitation, he began scraping, scratching, and scrabbling. He worked busily with his paws and muttered to himself, up we go, till at last, pop! His snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. Let's pause to think. What season is this story set in when Mole leaves his home? Yes, spring. Jot this down on your thoughts paper. Take a moment to think about what you have learned about Mole based on his words, thoughts, and actions, and jot that down on your Mole paper. Pause the video if you need more time. This is fine, he said to himself. This is better than whitewashing, he added as he jumped with delight at the joy of spring. In this state of happiness, he made his way across the meadow till he reached the hedge on the farther side. It all seemed too good to be true, as moving hither and thither, he observed everywhere birds building and leaves and flowers bursting forth. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, he came to the edge of a full-fed river. I'm thinking about that word meandered and what it means. In the previous sentence, the author said Mole was moving hither and thither as he observed birds and leaves and flowers, which means he is moving from one place to another. What do you think the word meandered means in this sentence? Moving slowly and without purpose. There he stood quite mesmerized, as never before had he seen a river. He watched in awe as it shimmered and shined, gurgled and burbled, swirled and curled its way seaward. So bewitched and fascinated was he that he trotted for a while by the side of it. Eventually, exhausted by this tremendous effort, he sat down on the bank to rest. As he sat on the grass and gazed across the river, a dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. Mole quietly contemplated, or thought, what a nice snug dwelling place it would make. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle like a tiny star down in the heart of it. But it could hardly be a star, and it was too glittering and small for a glowworm. Then, as he looked, it winked at him, and so revealed itself to be an eye. And a small face began gradually to grow up round it, like a frame round a picture. A brown little face with whiskers, a grave round face with the same twinkle in its eye, small neat ears and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. The two animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the Mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat. "Oh, it's all very well to ask," said the Mole, rather grumpily, he being new to a river and riverside life and its ways. Let's pause our story for a moment. Take a moment to think about what else you have learned about Mole based on his words, thoughts, and actions. Jot your thoughts on your Mole paper. Pause the video if you need more time to think. The rat said nothing but stooped and unfastened a rope and hauled on it. Then lightly stepped into a little boat which the Mole had not observed. It was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for two animals. And the Mole loved it immediately. The rat sculled across. Then he held up his forepaw as the Mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And the Mole, to his great delight, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. "This has been a wonderful day," said he, as the rat shoved off and took the sculls again. "Do you know I've never been in a boat before in all my life?" "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in a... You never... Well, what have you been doing then?" Is it so nice as all that?" asked the Mole shyly, though he was quite prepared to believe it, as he leaned back in his seat and surveyed the cushions, the oars, and all the fascinating fittings. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly, as he leant forward for his stroke. "Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing," he went on dreamily. "Messing about in boats. Messing." "Look ahead, Rat!" cried the Mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt. The oarsman lay on his back at the bottom of the boat, his heels in the air. "About in boats or with boats," the rat went on cheerily, picking himself up with a pleasant laugh. "In or out of 'em, it doesn't matter. Look here, if you've really nothing else to do, what do you say we spend time on the river together?" Let's pause our video for a moment. Take a moment to think about what you have learned about Mole and Rat. Jot your thoughts on your mole and rat papers. Pause the video if you need more time to think. The mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of contentment, and leaned back blissfully into the soft cushions. "What a day I'm having," he said. "Let us start at once." "Hold on a minute then," said the rat as he tied fast the boat and climbed up into his hole above. Moments later he reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. "Shove that under your feet," he said to the mole as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the boat and took the sculls again. "What's inside it?" asked the mole eagerly. "There's cold chicken inside it," replied the rat. "Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled gherkins, salad French rolls, cress sandwiches, potted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water." "Oh, stop, stop," cried the mole. "This is too much." "Do you really think so?" inquired the rat seriously. "It's only what I always take on these little excursions. The other animals complain that I hardly have enough." The mole did not hear a word he said. He was already absorbed in the new life he was entering upon. He trailed a paw in the water and dreamed long, waking dreams. The water rat, like the good little fellow he was, sculled steadily on and did not disturb him. "I like your clothes, old chap," the rat remarked after some half an hour or so had passed. "I'm going to get a velvet jacket myself someday." "I beg your pardon," said the mole, pulling himself together with an effort. "You must think me very rude, but all this is so new to me. So this is a river." "The river," corrected the rat. "And you really live by the river? What a jolly life." "By it and with it and on it and in it," said the rat. "It's brother and sister to me, and aunts and company, and food and drink, and, naturally, washing. It's my world, and I don't want any other." "But isn't it a bit dull at times?" the mole asked. "Just you and the river, and no one else to pass a word with?" "No one else to—" "Well, I mustn't be hard on you," said the rat. "You're new to it. The bank is so crowded nowadays that many people are moving away altogether. Oh no, it isn't what it used to be at all. Otters, kingfishers, dabchicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long and always wanting you to do something, as if a fellow had no business of his own to attend to. Let's pause our story for a moment. Take a moment to think about what you have learned about mole and rat based on their words, thoughts, and actions. Jot your thoughts on your mole and rat papers. Pause the video if you need more time to think. "What lies over there?" asked the mole, waving a paw towards a background of woodland that darkly framed the water meadows on one side of the river. "Well," replied the rat hesitantly, "that's the wild wood. We don't go there too often." "Are there scary creatures there?" Mole asked, trying not to tremble. "The squirrels are all right," Rat replied, "and the rabbits, some of them, but rabbits are a mixed lot. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Wouldn't live anywhere else either. Dear old Badger. Nobody interferes with or bothers him." "Why, who should interfere with him?" asked the mole. "Well, of course, there are others," explained the rat in a hesitating or pausing sort of way. "Weasels, stoats, foxes, and so on. They're all right in a way. I'm very good friends with them. Past the time of day when we meet, but you can't trust them, and that's a fact." "And beyond the wild wood?" Mole asked. Beyond the wild wood is the wide world, said the rat. And that's something that doesn't matter, either to you or me. I've never been there and I'm never going, nor you either, if you've got any sense. Don't ever refer to it again, please. Now then, here's our backwater at last, where we're going to lunch. That completes our section of the story today. Let's think more about our story. Go back to your papers about mole and rat. What things do you know about mole based on what you heard in the read aloud today? Pause the video if you need more time. Here is what I gathered about Mole based on his words, thoughts, and actions. He is weary of spring cleaning. He was fascinated by the river. He was excited to go with Rat on his boat. He wants to know more about Rat's luncheon basket in the wild wood. Did you have anything else that I forgot? Would you describe Mole as curious? Why or why not? I think I would describe Mole as curious because the text tells me that he is fascinated by the river. It even says that he watched in awe. He also asks Rat many questions throughout their trip. What do we call the parts of a story where characters speak to each other? Dialogue is where the characters speak. What types of things does Mole learn from his dialogue with Rat? Add to your chart. There are several things I could learn from the characters' dialogue. Rat thinks messing about in his boat is the best way to spend his time. He goes on trips in his boat frequently, and he is afraid of the wild wood. I was also thinking Mole learns that Rat might be afraid of the wild wood because he says, "I'm never going and don't ever refer to it again, please." The author gives us clues when writing dialogue that lets us know not only what the characters say, but how they say it. For example, when Rat tells Mole in a hesitating way about the wild wood, what does Mole learn from how Rat says it? Take a moment and jot your thoughts on paper. Pause the video if you need more time. Because the author used the word hesitating, which means he didn't answer right away, it makes me think that Rat does not want to talk about it. He stopped and paused before speaking. Based on my notes about Rat, I would describe him as both lively, because he likes to go on adventures, and anxious because he's afraid of the wild wood. We have learned quite a bit about Mole and Rat today. Using your papers on each of the characters, write a character description of each. Your paper might look something like this. For example, for Mole, you would say, I would describe Mole as blank using a trait because, and some evidence. In the text it says, some evidence from the text, also another piece of evidence. I would also describe Mole as, what's a different word you would use for Mole? One reason is something from the text. In addition, another piece of evidence from the text. So this would be for Mole, and you would do the same thing for Rat. When you finish, you will have 2 paragraphs about each of the characters. When you're finished writing, read them to someone at your house. I look forward to learning more with you tomorrow. Boys and girls, I enjoyed reading with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your home. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning Series. Goodbye, and I will see you tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Maria Lee, First Lady of Tennessee, and I'm so glad you're here. This has been an unprecedented time for our state and our country. I'm so proud to see how Tennesseans are coming together to serve and lift each other up in the midst of challenges. Each of us has a role to play, including you, our students. Right now, your school buildings may be closed, but there are many opportunities to keep learning. And we are so grateful for the partnership of PBS in bringing this program directly to you as one more way to keep us learning and growing together during this time. I want to also give a special thank you to all of the teachers who helped make this possible. We could not do it without them. Most of all, thank you for joining us.
The value parents place on reading makes a big difference in a child's reading and language development. You don't have to be a teacher or a great reader to create and nurture a love of reading in your child. It's beyond words on a page. It's about using stories to engage your child in the world around them. Start early because language development begins at birth. Exposing children to books early enriches their daily lives and builds strong thinkers. Just having books in the home, no matter your comfort level in reading aloud, can help a child grow to love reading and learning. Let your baby touch, feel, and even chew on the books.
Bah, said Gregory unhappily. Let me see your unhappy face.
Ask your child questions about the book and experiences the characters are having. Use the pictures to spark meaningful, engaging conversation, relating pictures to things in the child's day-to-day routine. Share the joy of books by bringing the story to life. Read with enthusiasm and energy in any language. Try using different voices for different characters.
Is that we're all here together.
Make up a funny story using the pictures, or act out characters and sounds animals make.
Hey.
Encourage your child to copy you and make his or her own noises.
That's good.
And most of all, reading with children and exposing them to books from the moment they're born instills an everlasting love of reading and learning that they'll have for the rest of their lives.